So it's going to be a little bit political. Obviously, I'm Scottish, I live in Scotland. So we're going to go over a little story, and I'll give my take on it as we go through. Scotland will have to delay ban on new petrol cars after PM move. The Scottish Government will be forced to push back its planned ban on fossil fuel cars, the SNP said. Its planned ban on fossil fuel cars. This is where we are. This is where we're at. They're planning to ban fossil fuel cars in Scotland by the year 2035, which is just over 10 years from now. And likely this will get pushed back and back and back. And there's a number of reasons for that. All of them are propaganda based. I mean, the role of government in general, well, the word government means mind control. So there's that. But specifically speaking, the goal of this government is to force their communist politics down everyone's throat, whilst managing any pushback to the maximum level. So in a sense, we're being farmed. What do I mean by that? Well, if you have a crop in a field, let's say you have several fields, right, and you're going to plant corn on one, you rotate the fields. And the reason you rotate them is because you can't pull all of the nutrients or whatever out of the ground year after year without giving it a chance to recover. And I think in a sense we're being farmed. Because one year, because they have obviously several political agendas, the communist ruling class, one of which is to, net zero on carbon, which basically, and the thing that's most insidious about that is the fact that, carbon dioxide is a trace gas which is required by every animal in the world, has respiration, which consumes oxygen and produces carbon dioxide. So it's essential for anything. Any type of metabolism or any type of useful work requires the production of CO2. So this plan they have is very insidious, and I think ultimately the CO2 they want to bring to zero is as human beings. The people want to reduce the population by hook and crook, and I think that's the underlying theme of all their agendas. But they know they can't push too hard in one area at any one time. So it's kind of like there's an old allegory about if you're making a bow, right, you bend the bow, right, to make the wood strong, but you can't overbend it, otherwise it'll break. So what you do is you bend it for a bit, and then you take the pressure off it, and then you come back to it later time and bend it again, and then incrementally increase the amount of bend that the bow will tolerate. So probably they were never planning, expecting to be able to. And let me what they're planning to do is, because they know that there's never going to be enough capacity to replace all the cars on the road with electric alternatives. So what they're essentially doing is, let's say for example, I don't know the numbers, 5% we have a capacity for 5% of all cars to be electricity, and that's in terms of the charging stations and the underlying infrastructure, the ability to produce batteries, all that those kind of logistics. They're planning to reduce the number of people on the roads and cars by 95%, whatever that shortfall is. They're saying they want to do it by 2030. They would have known all along that it was impossible to do it by 2030. So they'll probably go further back as well, because they have they don't care about whether people die or anything like that. Because these people, they want to reduce the population. They don't care whether we die, but what they do care about is if they impose enough hardship on us in a short enough period that we get angry enough to do something about it, which is get off our backsides, our medicated fat backsides, and go and throw these people out of their positions of power. They don't want that. So they do it. It's gently. and like step by step, ferociously, as Jeff Bezos would say. Scotland will have to push back its ban on new petrol and diesel cars to 2035. After Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announced a delay to his plan, the SNP has said. And I think that they want people to think that this guy Sunak, it's like there is only one political party in the UK, and they just have different, like, do you prefer your crisps, salt and vinegar, or cheese and onion? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, the differences between all of the political parties that we're allowed to vote for are largely cosmetic. Dave Duggan, the party's energy spokesman at Westminster, said the Scottish Government will not be able to stick to its targets of ending the sale of new petrol and diesel vehicles by 2030 because the country is snared into the UK Internal Market Act. Sunak on Wednesday eased a series of green pledges, including pushing back the ban by 5 years to 2035. I think the question people need to ask is, like, do these people actually spend any time thinking about things that actually regular people care about and are worried about? Like, it seems to me like the only thing they ever seem to ever be discussing is things like transgender rights. Like, they already have full rights under the law. There's not really anything left to discuss, except as like, and how privileged a status are these people going to be allowed to occupy? Like, are they going to be able to? I think that's all that's left to discuss, because they are equal under the law. You can't legally discriminate against a transgender person or a gay person or whatever for any reason in the employment space, whatever, They frame these things as though people, like transgender people, are being lynched in the streets. And I think that the fact of the matter is, the debate is whether how many privileges they should get that regular people don't get is the actual truth of the matter. And the things like climate change, which is basically just a globalist taxation scheme designed to keep us in dire poverty and ultimately, reduce the population by soft means. So I mean, it's just it's a lie that they've been trying to push on the population for over 100 years. I mean, they were talking about this concept of carbon dioxide linked to climate change goes back as far as the 19th century. Like, there's articles from the 19th century and probably earlier, if I was to go and check, talking about the possibility that the emissions from coal-fired plants could raise the temperature of the earth or raise the sea levels or whatnot. And there's never been a shred of evidence that any of it's true. But I don't want to get too into that. That is what it is, but it is part of the agenda. In an interview on BBC Radio's Good Morning Scotland programme, the SNP MP was asked how the Prime Minister's announcement affects the Scottish Government target. Because the thing is, they're trying to make Rishi Sunak sound like some sort of reasonable person who's trying to balance the climate disaster against what the people of the United Kingdom can't bear this cost, even though the climate disaster is looming and it's terrible and it's any minute millions are going to start dying, but we have to balance it against the practical. Like, it's like, and your average Joe Blogs, Joe Sixpack is going to see this and think, yeah, he's a reasonable man. He's not trying to be too extreme, and he cares about whether regular British people are going to be living in poverty, which obviously he does not. But that is the appearance and the narrative that is going to be trying to spun around this. That means you'll still be able to buy new petrol and diesel cars and vans until 2035, in line with countries like Germany and France. The reason they want to ban, there's lots of reasons they want to ban petrol and diesel cars. One of them is the range, like, because obviously these guys are talking about in the WF meetings, they're 15-minute cities. So they want everyone to be driving cars for one, right? Because it gives you too much mobility, too much freedom. They want you to be able to be stuck in a certain zone. They don't want you travelling too far. And obviously, a diesel engine has a far greater range than an electrical vehicle. I wouldn't be surprised if the net carbon emissions of producing these batteries and whatnot for these battery powered cars works out more over the lifetime of the car than just running it off of petrol or diesel. I bet they don't even care about that. I bet it's like, I need to look up the statistics, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit if the net carbon offset or whatever was, you know, it was actually produced more carbon to run these cars on battery. They don't care. I mean, the reason you could fire up coal-fired power stations and run your electric car off that, and these people wouldn't care, because the point of it is not to offset carbon. The point of it is to make motoring rarer and more expensive, and to limit your range and your options, how far you can go, where you're allowed to drive, all that kind of stuff. We will have to move to 2035 because even the Scottish Government did have the authority to intervene in that particular legislation, which is reserved to the Department for Transport and its agencies, principally the DVLA. We are snared in the United Kingdom into the Internal Market Act, which would see the UK Government intervene in any policy undoubtedly which creates the difference between the market in Scotland and the market in the rest of the United Kingdom. Well, these people would love to make us as poor as they possibly can, as fast as they possibly can, I'm sure. I'm certain of that. What we have to be very careful if we decided to do that is that we didn't put our motor manufacturing and retail business at a strategic disadvantage by operating in a way that was completely different to that which was in England, resulting in cross-border trade to access vehicles that you couldn't access in Scotland. So it's a complex dynamic, blah, 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 blah. Duggan described the UK Government decision to push the ban back to 2035 as an unprecedented tragedy for the automotive industry in the United Kingdom. An unprecedented tragedy for the motor industry. I wonder if these guys, are these guys just all psychopaths? Or do they believe all this political doctrine? They probably believe it. This is the thing, is that these guys at these government levels that we see and have access to, they probably do believe it. They probably are that indoctrinated. Imagine. Well, anyway, so that's the gist of it. I think I don't really want to talk about it anymore, because it's not that interesting. Just an example of the ongoing barrage of propaganda in this area. And, you know, once people start getting sick of it, maybe they'll go back to, you know, something they've previously hammered on, like, you know, your, don't say the words, the fun juice for the deadly pandemics. Maybe we'll have a new one next year, and this will go in the back burner for a little while. Once they've passed some laws that, you know, restrict our freedoms and a little bit more. And they'll come back to it in a year or two when everyone's forgotten about it and they're all upset about something else. Fun stuff. Cheers, have a good one. Like and subscribe as well, man. Feel free to comment down below.